Excellent. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Systems of Wealth podcast. I am your host, Noah Cromfly. This is the first podcast I've probably done in like 6 months, so I'm a little rusty. So everybody, bear with me, please. We got a perfect guest to be able to get off some of the rust. So this is fantastic. Joined today by a very special guest, incredible entrepreneur, coach, speaker, family man, sports aficionado and addict. So incredibly lucky to have, of course, the opportunity to talk with him today, to have worked with him on projects in the past, learned a ton from him. Super excited to get into his story. It is the great Bob Regnerus. Bob, really, really appreciate you jumping on today.
Are you talking about somebody else or me?
Spotlight's on you, my friend.
Good to be here, Noah.
Ah,
And I'll hold your hand. We'll get through this rusty period together, and
thank you.
we'll thoroughly entertain your audience.
You've done that at many points in my career, just held my hand and been my guide. So much
While
appreciated,
while
man.
you weep gently in my shoulder. Yeah, let's just reveal everything about
Yes,
our
exactly.
relationship.
Yeah, you're the guy. Really like from the jump, I wanted to start off. I start these, with these conversations and this like podcast has been awesome for me to be able to just highlight the people that have been very important in my career and like just so important in my life. And I like just starting and using this as an opportunity just to say thank you. I met you for the first time in 2019 at the Facebook ads workshop that you put on with Perry. I think the first and only Facebook ads workshop, if I'm correct. Um,
Yeah.
and I
Well,
had, yeah, go
it
ahead.
there was supposed to be more, but then we had this worldwide
Yeah.
thing that everybody seemed to
Ah,
participate in,
gosh, I don't remember what
and
that.
it
I don't.
went virtual, but
So
it was
weird.
good.
Yes. But I personally had no idea how much my life was going to change just getting to meet you there. And, I was very early on. I'm still very early on just in my entrepreneur career, but just as a marketer and getting introduced to that level of sophistication when it came to running ads, but also just my introduction to the Planet Perry world and just how much
Yeah.
my own, understanding of who I am as a person, as an entrepreneur, and the growth that I've had just being a part of that community. Obviously, I got to work with you on building the funnel for the Ultimate Guide to Facebook Advertising. Again, thank you
Yeah.
for plugging me in on that and giving me that was like my first ever official. I don't know if I told you that, but my first ever like official funnel paying gig.
Oh, you
uh,
did one of those. I've done those. I've done that a few times in my career.
may
Like,
have
oh
said
yeah, I know
like
how to do that.
yeah, I got these under my belt. I think, just for like, for anybody listening, actually what I did, so I built a free funnel or like a free landing page for Perry's 80/20 book just to like get practice. And then I actually think I built a funnel for you on like advertising the ads coaching that you were selling at the time. I think I just built like like a mock funnel and I sent it to you and I was like, "Hey, like you can use this if you want. Like this is just what I'm working on." And I think that's what started the conversation. Then you reached out like a month later and you're like, hey, I actually do need your help with the funnel. And that's actually how it led to that. So something to keep
Oh,
in mind for
cool.
everybody. Yeah. So pretty interesting. But yeah, it's just again, wanted to say thank you for, being an incredible mentor, coach, getting to the opportunity to work with you so consistently has just been such a joy and a true highlight of my career. And, being a for me at times and just some of the things that I've navigated and struggled with. So again, wanted to just say thank you from the jump here.
Love you, man. Great. Love it's all good. I appreciate it. I do it out of love, and I do like hearing that. That does like it's really important to be grateful, as you know.
Of course.
And I think it's a good practice to not just be grateful inside, but when you do get when somebody is important to you, I think it's important that you do reach out. So for
Yep.
me, I try to make that a priority. Um, it's not real comfortable for somebody to go on and listen to, but like yeah, I have to admit, like one of my values, one of my coach just recently, as we flipped the calendar year, was like, he said, just own up to it, Bob. One of your
Yeah.
values is acknowledgement. So just be okay with that. Like
Yes.
you need to be acknowledged for the work you do. So just own it. I'm like, okay. So I smiled all the way through that. It
Good.
was good.
Fantastic. Yes. Express the love, give the love.
I I'm also in I'm in a really cool mastermind this year, and I had to tell a story yesterday that kind of gave people a sense of like, what was one of your biggest wins? And I
Yeah.
told the Facebook ads
All
story.
right.
And I think it's important that I tell it. Like, there's a reason it came to mind.
Yeah,
So
please.
here's 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 this thing, and this is going to tie into like you just saying, "Hey, Bob, I can do this funnel for you."
Yeah.
So I have been doing Facebook ads since 2013. Wasn't like I was a newbie at it. And in March of 2018, yes, I believe it was March of 2018, I got a call from Perry, and Perry was like, "Hey, Bob," he's like, "we need to get the fourth edition of the Facebook ads written, and I'd love to hear who you would recommend to write that book for me." And I'm like, hmm. This inner voice inside of me
Yeah.
goes, "You are gonna write
Yes.
it." So I
Yeah.
said, "Perry, I'm gonna write it." He's like, "Really?" In the most Perry way possible, like, "Really? You're gonna write it?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, I thought you were kind of moving on to video and things like that." I said, "Well, yeah, but I feel like I should have written the second version and the third version. So
Yeah,
this is
right.
my redemption."
Yes.
And so he goes, "Well, okay." He's like, Obviously he'll have the inside track, but I'll need to check with Brian and we'll need to vet out. There's a couple other people that, we've approached. And so, we'll let you know." And it turned out Perry came back about a month later. He's like, "Yeah, you're going to write it."
Hmm.
So that was me just going like, "Look, this is something I'm going to do."
Yep.
And it was a huge undertaking.
Of
Mark
course.
Ingalls, my buddy, helped me write that.
Yep.
But
Shout out
at
to
the same
Mark.
time, yeah, but at the same time, um, I made another request to Perry. It was after one of his memos events. Mark and I and Perry were in the car. We were driving to go get some dinner. And I just heard the voice say again, like, "Ask Perry what you want to do." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I say, "Perry, I'd like to host a Facebook workshop in the fall." I think it was 2019.
End of
No, was that
2019. Yeah, it was probably
okay?
November, around October.
Okay,
Yeah, around that time. Yeah.
so in July of 2019, as I was working, I had been working through the book for almost a year. I mean,
Yep.
books just don't happen I mean, the book itself, like, this is the book.
Yeah. It's
It's
a thick.
okay. So the first edition of this book was double that. So like I submitted this
Yeah,
thick of a
right.
book and they're like, no. I I I had been compiling an outline of everything that I knew about Facebook and would want to teach.
Yeah.
And yeah, I submitted the whole kit and caboodle. And they're like, "Yeah, we got to cut half of that out." But I also had been like, okay, if I were to host a workshop, these are the things I would want to cover.
Yep.
So I said, "Perry, I want to host a live workshop, get about 12 people in the room, spend 2 days, and let's dig into Facebook." And Perry was like, "Yeah, go for it." And of course was like, "Tell me what you want to do." So, kind of did all the work. But we put the promotion out, and about 3 to 4 weeks before the event happened, Perry's right-hand person calls and says, "Hey, Bob, we only got two signups." He's like, we're on the bill for the hotel. We can exit out like 30 days in advance and get our money back." And again, I just heard this voice like, "Nope, it'll fill." And I told him, I said, "No, we're not going to do that." I said, "It's going to be on. We're going to do it."
Yep.
And yeah, true to form and true to Planet Perry form,
Yep.
like all the other 10 signups occurred um, within the last 2 weeks of the event.
Yep.
The other thing, and I told this story in the event, I don't know if you remember this, but like 2 days before that event, I was sick as a dog. I was
Yes.
laying in bed. I couldn't get
Yes.
out of bed. And I just laid there going, "What's going on? Like, what is this?" And I just heard the word resistance. And
Hmm.
it reminded me of Stephen Pressfield's book, The War of Art,
Mm.
that when you're about to do something great, there's going to be this opposing force that's going to
Yes.
come along that's just going to go, "All right, are you serious?" and I
Mm.
just said to myself, I'm going to be fine. And I woke up the morning of the event, felt great,
Yep.
got there. And another funny thing happened is I had so much shit prepared. Like I had pages and pages of stuff that I was going to teach. Like, all right, I got all these people coming here. Like
Yep.
I'm going to teach them all this stuff.
Right.
And I let off with that, but then something was inside of me again goes, just let's just take care of their problems.
Mm.
So literally what we ended up doing, and you remember this, Noah, is we just went around the room and I'm
Hmm.
like, all right, what are you working on?
Yep.
What's challenging?
Yep.
And I just went around the room, all 12 primaries, and like, what are you working on? What do
Yep.
we fix? And I fixed all those problems over two
Hmm.
days, right? And you happened to be there, of course, with Scott. Now, our friend Scott Shang was flying across the country from California to
California.
Philly,
Yep.
and he's like, "Oh, well, this is like in the like I'm on my way to Philly, and I've been running ads for Find My Way Home, and like this would be good." And of course, you were a friend of his working
Yep.
on it. Like, hey, you took you along,
Hmm.
and Scott's like, "I'm not really sure how I ended up in the room, but I did." And now, you and Scott are amongst my best friends in the world. We
Yep.
have worked together. We have fun together. And I'm just like, how fun is it that this Facebook event that I conceived as I was driving to dinner, I think we went to like Five Guys for burgers. And I'm like, what the reason I told that story yesterday was I wanted to remind myself how brave I was
Yes.
and the chances that I've taken.
Yes.
And all all my best wins were when I kind of jumped off the ledge.
Mm.
Um, I'm thinking back to 2004. I went to my first Dan Kennedy seminar,
Yeah.
and I met Bill Glazer, who had bought an interest in Glazer Kennedy. Obviously, his name's on the company. He formed a partnership with Dan, and they held the first ever Info Summit. And Bill offered a mastermind, and he's like, it's $1,000 a month. And at that time, like 12 grand a year was like, oh my goodness. Now I wasn't generating that kind of income then,
Right.
but I'm like, I got to be in that room.
Yep.
And I went back to my hotel room and I wrote Bill a sales letter. I'm like, this is like, hey, you're taking a chance on a newbie. Like I'm a
Mm.
sponge. I've got these skills. I was a programmer. I was a beginning marketer, and I'm like, I think I could contribute to the group, and I think it'd be good for you to have kind of a wet behind the ears green guy in the room for you to kind of mold and shape. And Bill called me. And he goes, I really liked your letter. And he's like, congrats. I agree with you. I want to have you in the room. And gosh, no, that room over 5 years, I became friends with Ryan Dice. Russell Brunson was in
Oh,
there.
wow. Oh, I
Victor
didn't know
Chang.
this.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Ali Brown, Tom Arendt.
Big
Um,
hitters.
just
Goodness.
really big hitters. Ed O'Keefe.
Wow.
And then, but I met probably one of the most influential men of my life, Rob Berkeley, who passed away 4 years ago.
Yep.
He really inspired me and is inspiring some of the stuff that I'm getting into now, but was just a transformational person in my life. And again, it was like I was just reminding myself yesterday, like, I'm making some personal shifts, as you know, and things like
Yep.
that. And I'm
Yep.
just like, "Oh, Bob, again." But then I'm just reminding myself, like, no, this is what you do, and
This has
this
always
is
been, yeah.
this is what you do, and
Right.
your intuition is always right. You've got this inner compass that you direct your life by, and it's never let you down yet. Um, so it was just cool to like, and again, I didn't know I was going to tell that story,
Yep.
and that I did, and I was just like, oh, I'm so glad I did because other people picked up on that and just reminded me of some of the things that were like, hey, this is kind of one of your superpowers is
Yes.
a lot of people don't listen to their gut or they don't trust their gut like
Right.
you do,
Yes.
and you haven't been let down. So it was really cool to tell its story, and now it's like, oh, of course, like I'm on Noah's podcast. I got to tell this story because that's where you and I met.
Yes,
And
100%.
and the fact is, like, I picked up two lifelong friends, probably a couple more, but like you and Scott, obviously we've gotten a lot closer than some of those
Yeah,
people. But just amazing sometimes when you say yes to things,
100%.
the
Yeah.
goodness that comes out of it.
100%. Amy was in that room. Amy Leckoff, shout out to Amy. She's fantastic.
Yeah,
I think there's
yeah.
something like there's a couple things there that I do want to, kind of pull the thread on, but one of them, I think is so interesting, that I've always thought of myself as like, or at least where I started with paid ads, marketing online, but the majority of the clients and the relationships that I work with on a day-to-day basis have come from being in like the right rooms, like being outside of like from behind the computer and being in the room and making those types of connections and like not necessarily running ads to get clients. Like that's a service that we provide and we do a lot. But like me as an entrepreneur in my business, so much of like the relationships that I have and the clients that I've gotten have all been being in the right rooms. And it sounds like, I mean, obviously that's been sort of the case in your journey as an entrepreneur as well.
Yeah, it is. It is clearly a function of who I know versus what I know.
Yeah.
It
Yep.
I mean, how many people are experts at Facebook ads? And at the time, I was a Google Ads expert
Right.
um, and a programmer. Like hundreds of thousands of people had the same skills,
Right.
but I put myself in a position where I leverage relationships and yeah, again, I think something with inside me said like, look, getting in Bill Glazer's group is going to catapult you forward.
Mhm.
it it can't not, you know what I
Right.
mean? Like, I mean, certainly I could have gone there and not really applied myself, but
Right.
I said, look, like this is an opportunity, and again, it was a stretch financially. Like, I got to make this work,
Yep.
type of thing.
Right.
So, yeah, there's a lot of things. Ironically, I've been in marketing for 25 years. Like, the thing that, like, I've never been able to run paid ads to grow my business.
Right. Right. Right.
Like it's just the ironic thing is like I
Yep.
wrote a book on how to grow your business with paid ads, and it doesn't work on me. I grow my business by being part of groups, getting into masterminds, developing relationships,
Yep.
developing trust, and
Yes.
doing that, and then getting referrals from those people.
Yep.
That's how I have traditionally grown my business.
Right.
It's 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 ironic that
Right.
the things that I teach people do not work for me, but they absolutely
Of
work for others. It's not like,
course.
oh, Bob, you're full of shit. No, like my stuff has helped people generate tremendous wealth. I've got
100%.
a lot of stories about that, but for me, the way I'm wired is like, no, for you, it's this is how you grow. So it is a lot about being in the right room, right place, right time.
Yeah, 100%. That's been my experience as well. I mean, the first roundtable that I was at with for Perry was in San Diego a couple months after the Facebook ads workshop, and I was had the luck to sit next to Mark at dinner, and he basically told me like I was running ads and doing a lot of ads, and he's like, "Don't run ads to get Facebook ads clients," and it was so like, "Huh?"
Duh.
And then, yeah, like
What?
what? And then as I got deeper into it, I was like, I get it. I totally understand like the sentiment from that. The other story that I would love for you to tell is sort of that same sort of approach of like, the feeling that you had like you were had this, what you were going to do with the Facebook ads book, and then even what you're going to do with the workshop. I know you had the same sort of approach for the AI seminar last year of like what you were going to present on, and then all of a sudden it turned into just talking about stories and being a human and kind of connecting. Can you like touch on that and
Yeah.
kind of share that story as well? Because I think it's along the same sort of sentiment.
Well, it was 2016 when we made the shift. It's when I started Feed Stories with Brandon, and it was in the parking lot of Facebook headquarters. Um, Facebook just started talking about video at this event.
Yep.
There was 100 advertisers in the room, and they just kept talking about video, and that prompted me to call Brandon at lunchtime, and we essentially agreed, yeah, we're going to start a video production marketing company. But what took me several years to realize was what was attractive about video was not creating video, it was the stories.
Mm,
And the idea of drawing things out of people, and being able to capture what's inside of them and record it is a really lovely thing. It's a lovely skill to have.
Yeah.
What I've realized last couple of years is this this ultra empathy that I have, and I can only describe it as that, is like I feel people, I read people, and it gives me this ability to really dig deep with people and ask questions that unlock things.
Right.
And there's a lot of application of that, as you can imagine. What I realize is that in the process of creating this company, the thing that interested me about the company was the people and their
Mm.
stories,
Hmm.
and it was less about everything else. So I have been diving deep into storytelling and how to make deeper connections with an audience and just really going deep on that. But yeah, Perry had asked me to speak, and I really didn't know what I was going to speak about. Um, and then my mother passed in April of last year, and I took 2 weeks, 2 weeks with my wife. We just went away to Myrtle Beach. We
Yeah.
golfed. It was just like I just got to get away. And while I was there journaling every morning, it just the inner voice showed up again. Noah
Hmm.
was like, it just gave me something different to talk about.
Hmm.
So I called Perry. I'm like, Perry, we're friends. So I'm like, do you trust me
Yep.
to bring something? He's like, implicitly. So whatever you need to share, go ahead and share. So I chose to speak about, in relation to AI, there is a level of anti-humanity in it.
Hmm.
And what I talked about was, well, how do you position yourself against a machine that knows way more than you?
Hmm.
What are people going to value in you? Well, it's not what you know anymore, because at the click of a keyboard, or now you can pick up your phone and talk to it,
Hmm.
you can ask it any question about anything that's ever been answered in all times and get the answer instantly. So people are not necessarily going to value you anymore for like the information you give them.
Hmm.
And what they're going to value is your wisdom about that information.
Hmm.
So I talked about things like building community, like building relationships, live experiences, almost like, hey, if everybody's going this way towards technology, I'm going to go this way towards humanity. I'm going to zag while they zag.
Right.
And I talked about storytelling. I talked about putting out your story, putting out your personal stories, letting people know who you are, and genuinely connecting with the marketplace. And I mean, you saw the room. It was quite powerful.
Yep.
And the line of people that came up afterwards thanking
Hmm.
me for giving them permission to be who they are.
Yes.
I did nothing except this. Like I talked about a lot of things, but ultimately what I gave people permission to do was to be who they are.
Hmm.
And so that to me is my next work. It is fully embracing that and going deep with how do I help people unlock who they are and
Hmm.
create a personal life and a professional life and a business around who they are, how they're wired, what their superpower is. Giving them permission to fully embrace that and then go, raise the consciousness on the planet, inspire people, do it that. That is very interesting to me, and that talk was really a start of kind of this next phase in my career.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I mean, you could feel like the heaviness like in the room, or just like how much it hit with people, like just being in there in a conference that was all about digital paid advertising, talking about AI and getting
Right.
lost and kind of that. And then
A
all of a
lot of
sudden it's like,
engineers,
yeah.
a lot of like teach me all the prompts you know,
Right.
and I chose to go a different direction. Now I'm
Yeah.
speaking again this year, and I'm
Yep.
like, Rick, how am I going to top that? What am I going to
Yep.
talk about?
I
But
think that inner voice has probably got something for you.
the inner voice is going to tell me something in a couple months,
Totally.
so
100%.
I am just not going to worry about it.
Nor should you. Nor should you. I would really like to dig into that like a little bit deeper. It's been something that I was putting on my notes as while I was prepping for the podcast today. Sort of, it's something that I am a big sort of reason why I started this podcast was like I have questions that I'm navigating in my early career as an entrepreneur, and I have the quite honestly, I'd call it like the luxury of being able to talk to people that are, you know, much more experienced and down the line have probably navigated similar things, and maybe people in my position are having the same sort of feeling, right? So maybe this can be an outlet or a, a value to people. And so one of those things as like I am in my position right now is sort of identity, right? And I think
Yeah,
I remember you were talking about it at the seminar that like when you go up to people, they kind of, hey, like good to meet you. What do you do? Right. And sort of it's like what we do for our work is like who we are. Right. And I think we kind of forget sometimes like how to explain who I actually am, or like it gets lost, like our identity gets attached and gets lost into like, oh, I am a marketer or I am, a CRM builder and that's who I am. And like what I do is all encompassing of like who Noah is. Right. And so
yeah.
what's your kind of like, feeling like when you help people kind of break out of that and sort of find their identity or like who they actually are, what is like some of the, I don't know, practical applications of like how people can kind of navigate that, some of that stuff?
Well, there's a lot there.
Yeah,
I think some people absolutely love the fact that their identity is wrapped up in their work,
for sure.
and that's okay. I'm not judging that at all.
Yeah, of course.
But I think a lot of people, if they're honest with themselves, take a look at what they do and realize it's not in alignment. Um, I mean, a lot of people, just the career shifts and people leaving the workforce and going into business. What are they seeking? They're probably seeking independence and freedom, financial rewards, but
Yes.
I, I think they're seeking something that's more in alignment with who they are.
Right.
Uh, there's something dissatisfying to me to be completely identified just by your work
Mm,
because it doesn't really fully capture who I am as a human. I started running these experiences where I bring four people together or six people together, wouldn't introduce them. Um, because when you ask people to introduce themselves, they immediately go to their resume. And while that could be interesting, it doesn't really reflect who that person is. So what we do instead is we say, hey, tell us a story that really gives us an idea of who you are.
hmm
Now, what happens when that occurs is that typically somebody goes for something very personal,
Yep.
right? It's very meaningful, and what you get is four or six strangers come together, and inside of 2 hours, there's this incredible bond that forms.
Right.
Is because we took off the gladiator suits and we found out, that this person really has this heart for children's charities, or this person, has taken care of their mother who has been ill for 10 years. And it's like all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, that's who that person really is. It's not
Yes.
that they run this successful SEO company
Right.
or they're an operations guru or they're a mortgage expert. Like, okay, that's interesting and it's an aspect of how you show up in the world, but this other piece of you is really interesting.
hmm
When I talk about Facebook ads or video, like, okay, I can hold people's attention. But as soon as I talk about the fact that I'm a high school basketball coach, people lean in are like, well, tell me about that.
Right.
Like, what's that like? Spending your, 4.5 months every winter with 16-year-old boys who know everything and smell like garbage and
Yep.
Axe spray, right?
Right.
Like, that's way more interesting. Or, the fact that my wife and I go golfing multiple times a week, and it's like, wow, my wife doesn't do that. Like I've got more depth to me than just the fact that I'm this expert or that expert. So I I personally think, and I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but like I know that as I build this new thing, I'm going to attract people that are frankly tired of being
Mm,
identified by what they do, and they're much more interested in wrapping who they are into their business and being able to be authentic. And it to me, it would just make business much more fun. You know,
Totally.
you don't have to pretend. You don't have to put on an act. You don't have to
Right.
copy somebody else. You know, I'm so tired of like all the marketing where it's posturing and it's
Right.
like they're trying to act like Russell Brunson or Ryan Dice. They're trying to mimic somebody else. And it's like, look, dude, it's not you. Like
Yes.
I you're just trying to be a copycat of somebody.
Right.
Like, who are you?
Right.
Like, you know?
Yeah.
So
I think there's two things there that are really I think are so valuable. I mean, one of them that I learned from Perry, and I'm so thankful early on to go deep into his material is like, a 20, 21-year-old because it forced me very early on to almost I like face and stand firm and look at some of the like personal things that I had experienced growing up and sort of almost like clear some of that stuff and get like okay with that. And so then I could build from a place of sort of foundation and alignment. It was almost like the answers of what I was looking for in my business were hidden in what I had experienced and who I was growing up. And it was
yeah,
interesting to build from that perspective rather than sort of like the analogy is sort of like, what Perry uses is sort of like what people are, presenting online, sort of like business in a box, plug into this system, and all of a sudden, like money flows your way, right? And it's kind of like, sounds too good to be true, probably is, right? And so
it is.
it is. And a big part of the program Perry put together last year that I got to co-host with him, the 0 to 100K program, like the whole first kind of modules of that is very much like there's no such thing as a perfect business. There's only a perfect business for you, right? And so being almost self-aware and intuitive and being tapped into that voice and building from a place of like, well, that's how you could stand out in the marketplace because like this is a message and a voice that resonates that nobody can really copycat or take away from me because it is unique to me and it is my story. And I think it's difficult sometimes to like be, I don't know, comfortable with that or like own the truth. And you kind of like some of that stuff you just like, I'm not going to deal with it because it causes pain. But as you deal with that and it becomes something that like you own and it becomes like your truth, then you can share it. And people, I mean, there's nobody that on this planet that can be, that hasn't had hardships or dealt with something that like is very defining of who they are as a person. So we can all, relate and connect and see that and see ourselves in that. I think that's super valuable. And then the other one for me has always been, I find it difficult to be someone that like stands at the mountain and kind of shouts and puff my chest out and like, look how good I am, right? Like that's really difficult. It's a big reason why the way that I do these podcasts is like I bring on somebody that I think is super interesting. Spotlight is on them. Like I just want to be in the background. Like I'm just a fly on the wall. I'm curious, but I think telling stories is so valuable because like it is true. That's not really like
Right.
something that I need to make up or like is fancy marketing. It's like, no, look at like the truth. Look at what I did. Let me tell you the story about like why I started this business or where I come from or this person that I helped. And that is just so valuable. You can just get lost in that and just tell the story and like put it out there. It doesn't need to be anything fancy or just, beyond that at that point.
Yeah, the uniqueness is a big factor. You've heard this story before, but I'll tell it. I
Yeah.
really learned this back in 2013 when I started working with a woman named Amy Kraus.
Yes.
Uh, she she was a woman out in Colorado, married to her husband JD, who's an entrepreneur. But the story goes is that she loved CrossFit. She would go to the gym, and she had this wispy blonde hair that would get in her face, and she liked to wear headbands. And her own admission is that her head was weirdly shapen, and she couldn't find headbands that would stay on her head. So she figured there's got to be a better solution. So she sat down at her kitchen table, dining room table, and started sewing. Went and found different materials, went through a bunch of prototypes, and came across something that actually worked. Started wearing them to the gym, and her friends were like, "Hey, Amy, like, what are those?" And
Yeah.
she's like, "Well, these are my new headbands." And they're like, "They're great. Can you make me some?" Well, JD is like, "Amy, you're making a lot of these headbands lately. What's going on?" She's like, "Well, the my friends at the gym like these, so they're basically paying for the materials, and they're buying them for me." And JD's like, "Huh." He's like, I wonder if strangers will want to buy these." Well, serendipitously, easy enough for me to say. I'd send out an email and say, and to my list, and I'm like, hey, I am making a shift from Google Ads to Facebook ads, and I am looking for 3 companies to work with, and you're going to get a great service because you're going to get it cheap. You're going to help me build my skill set, and if you have something that you think is a fit, reach out. Well, JD reached out. He's like, I got on the phone with he and Amy, and we started talking about these headbands. And during the course of that conversation, I said out loud, I had the audacity to go, well, Amy, when we're successful with this, the reason we're going to be successful, I said, first of all, you're going to get knocked off
Yep.
because as soon as you create something successful, people are going to see it, think it's easy, knock it off. I said, but here's why they're not going to be able to knock you off is because we're going to have you tell your story, and
Mm.
we are going to market this product with your story. And this is the beginning of the explosion of Facebook. So, we took the position of, hey, yeah, we're selling great headbands for a premium price, $20 a pop. Um, but we started telling Amy's story, and in fact, we created a really simple 30-second video on an iPhone, which was like, "Hi, I'm Amy Krause. I'm a mother. I'm a CrossFitter, and I couldn't find a headband that would stay in my head, so I created Boulder Bend headbands." Um, and I'm drawing a blank. It's like, oh, we, it was like these bands stay fit, so you or these bands stay stay still so you don't have to.
Yeah,
It was
right.
kind of that premise.
Yes. Yep.
And so join our community of fun-loving women at boulderband.com. It was a very simple ad. And we also then encouraged Amy to share things about her life. So things about being a mom.
Yep.
She is a woman of faith, things about her faith, things about workouts. And she grew this huge community of over 300,000 people on this page. And just a year later, after running this ad, this ad that we created was seen by 35 million women. We generated
Goodness.
100,000 new customers, and we actually in
Wow.
2014 were the clothing retailer of the year. Um, Shopify clothing retailer of the year. Think about that. People were selling dresses and boots and jackets and whatever.
Everything. Think
She
about
was
it. Yeah.
selling headbands. So they generated the most sales of any clothing retailer on Shopify in 2014, and they got to take a trip to New York and see David Johns and Ariana Huffington.
Crazy.
Um,
Crazy.
so that showed me the power of how do you, and oh, by the way, people tried to knock her off all the
Yeah,
time.
of course. Right.
Like you would see her headbands all over Amazon. These companies would pop up, which were people that likely bought from her, by the way, right? And like knew
Right.
exactly what the product was made of. But she dominated that for several years, ended up
Right.
selling the company. But it was like nobody could knock off Amy's story. And
No.
the timing was like, look, if you try to do that now, it's probably not going to happen.
Right.
But the fact is, the timing of that with how Facebook was growing, it was just
Yep.
like things just kind of came together. And she had first mover advantage and some of
Right.
those things, but she told her story, which was not comfortable for her.
Yep.
But it made this it built this community. It created her in such a unique light that nobody essentially could copy her business. They
No.
could not knock her off.
Right.
And that's just something that I learned then. It's just part of what we do now, which is like we need to interject your story.
Yes.
You know, are you just going to be a CPA, or are you going to be a
Mm.
CPA that I'm thinking about the experience you were in. Our CPA is like this coffee loving nut, right?
Love him. Josh, right? Yes.
Yeah, like
Love Josh.
let's make you interesting. Most CPAs are not interesting.
And he really is. Like as soon as you started like listening to him, like, gosh, dude, like, yeah, you got a lot going on.
Yeah. He had a biking accident and he like
Biking
broke
and
his
yeah.
back.
Right.
These are things that make you interesting.
Hmm.
Like people are interested in your product to a point, but what they're really interested in is all that other stuff. They just
Yes.
really are.
Right.
If that wasn't the case, then Instagram wouldn't be a thing.
Right.
TikTok wouldn't be a thing. Reality TV wouldn't be a thing.
Right.
People like to just li they like to live other people's lives. They like to hear other people's stories. They just do.
Yep.
So you gotta lean into it.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. In a world where AI is like leading to this idea of automation and I can just set this thing up and not think about it. It's like the pivot, kind of like what you were saying, right? When people are going down this way, you're going to go this way, right? And so the world is going that.
Yeah,
And it's like actually the touchy feely, I need that connection more and more because like the world, like I feel it in, internally for my own sort of like the age that like I'm young, but I'm still in a position where I grew up knowing what it was like life without a phone, like what life without social media, right? I still feel
you
that. And then
do?
like I
Wow.
do probably from I got my first phone in fourth or fifth grade. I mean, what are you?
Okay.
You're like 11, maybe 10. So like I remember what it was like to not be that and not be on Facebook. And now like that has been, the last, I don't know, dozen years has been all of that. And so then now I feel it now where I'm like, I just want to be removed from that stuff. I don't want like I want to be like in this like actual what is real. Like I don't want this to be a simulated feeling of like connection with people. I actually want to feel the connection with people. Like that is why for me being in
Well,
those rooms is so valuable.
you need to participate in the matrix, but not be plugged into it.
Well said. Well said.
That's the difference.
I want to, there's two things that came out of what we were talking about. One, like I want to dig into, so I mean, you mentioned, you've been a programmer, you did Google ads, you did Facebook ads, you've been, you ran a video company. Like, did your journey through entrepreneurship, was it like, I'm going to pursue being like, I want to be an entrepreneur. I have this spirit in me and this is what I'm going to do? Was it just sort of I'm pursuing like skills and what I'm good at, and you just kind of found yourself in these positions? Like a little bit of your story. I would love to kind of understand that.
Yeah, I mean, my dad was a career banker, worked for the same company, even though, they were all these banks get bought.
Yeah.
But he essentially worked for the same company. It just kept getting bought by new people. A career banker had to retire early for health reasons, like went downtown, carried the briefcase, took the train, did everything. And I thought,
Yep.
oh, okay, well that's what you do, right?
Right.
My mom, she was a stay-at-home mom until later on, and she ended up doing a bunch of jobs to earn some money to pay for a private school tuition, and ended up a banker herself, which is funny. But I thought, well, okay, that's what you do, and I fell in love with computers really
Mm.
early in my life. Sat down in front of an Apple IIe when I was 10 years old, and I'm like, oh my gosh,
Wow. Yeah.
like this what is this thing? What is this machine? And I was obsessed with like how to create the things that were I was like the games I was playing and the programs. So
Got it. Interesting.
I would just program for fun as a 10-year-old, 11, 12-year-old. Got to high school and took all the programming classes I could, and essentially I didn't teach the class, but like um, I would finish programming so quickly. It was like just breathing for me that the teacher would be like, "Okay, go help everybody else." So I would go help everybody else. I did the same thing in college. I took like as many programming classes as I could, and I just assumed, okay, I'm gonna get a job, working on a computer, right? That's and so I did. I graduated from University of Illinois Chicago in 1992, and I started working for Amoco Corporation
Hmm.
and in their motor club division. And I was on this team that maintained their kind of their customer information system, which
Okay.
was a mainframe uh, thing. By the way, in college, I like was very deliberate. Like I knew that I needed an edge,
Yeah.
so I worked full time when I was in college at the computer operations center for the university. So I would go to class from like 8 till 2. I'd go home and sleep a couple hours. Make sure I would either go to the Bulls game or watch the Bulls game, visit with my girlfriend.
Yeah.
But I would work from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m.
What? You were working a
Yeah,
graveyard shift,
I worked
dude?
the graveyard shift, and
Crazy.
then had a little
Wow.
time to go get some coffee and went to school. So
Amazing.
I did that for 3 years.
Wow.
It was impressive to people that came on campus to interview, believe me.
Yeah.
And so. I did get a job
Wow.
offer from the university, like, hey, you want to stay on? I'm like,
Yeah,
no, I didn't do all this work for 3 years to stay here. Like, I'm going, I want to work downtown. I want to take the train and have a briefcase like my dad,
Yep.
which I did. And I actually wore a suit. Like, you had to wear suits,
You
dude.
did. All right.
So I did the whole commuting thing, and like I got a great offer. I was really happy with my offer, and I'm
Yeah.
like, great. My wife also worked downtown, so it was like perfect. But 2 weeks into getting hired, Amoco announced a round of layoffs. I'm like, oh,
Ah.
interesting. So 2 weeks in, and I knew I was fine. I was
Okay.
cheap, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But uh, within a month after I got hired, they announced these layoffs. And a month after I got hired, people that I met for the first time a month ago, I now were saying goodbye to as they carried their belongings
Ah.
out in a cardboard
Hmm.
box.
No.
And I said to myself, huh.
Ah. Interesting.
I'm like, something's amiss here. That
Yes.
was the first story. The second story was a year into my employment, I got my performance review, and
Hmm.
I love being acknowledged, right? We
Yep,
talked
right.
about that. So I was a top performer,
Okay,
and I
obviously.
received I think it was like a 2.6% raise. So it was like awesome.
Nice little bump.
Well, in my peer group, like we all kind of started together. One of the guys was like, "Hey, I knew he wasn't a fit. He was looking to get out.
Yeah.
He did his peer review, and he was a below average performer.
Uh-huh.
He got a 2.2% raise."
Ah.
And I'm like, I busted my ass for 0.4%.
Yeah, doesn't quite
Like,
equate.
okay, okay. So I gutted it out for 3 years, and I got a better offer to move to a different company, and I took it working on IVR systems,
Yep.
and worked my ass off there. I had to drive 90 miles round trip every day.
Oh,
I worked
gosh.
there for 3 years. I feel like I worked there for six because you had to work long hours.
Yep.
This is before kids, by the way. And then I befriended a guy. I was actually working with a guy who was doing the same thing I was, but he was a contractor. I'm like, well, tell me, what's that mean?
Yeah,
What's that all about?
right.
And he's like, well, I get paid by the hour. And I found out what he was getting paid, and I did the calculation. I'm like, shit, he's getting paid more than me. And he like essentially can call his own shots.
Right. Do what he wants.
So
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, like I filed that. He got rolled off that project and he started working on another project, and he called me and he's like, "Hey man," he's like, "There's a position to do programming over at TransUnion, the credit reporting agency."
Hmm.
He's like, "It's a good contract. It's going to be $100 an hour." And
Whoa.
I'm like,
Yeah.
yes. And he's like, I'll take, and he goes, I'm going to charge the client 110. He goes, I'm going to take $10 an hour, and I'll take care of all the administrative stuff for you. But what he did was he helped me at the time form my own corporation. Taught me about withholding FICA and like all the things you got to learn from that standpoint. And I worked on that project, and it allowed me to start coaching at the high school.
Yep.
This was 1998, so I started, I really wanted to coach high school basketball. It opened up that door. I worked from like 5 a.m. to 1 or 2 in the afternoon every day, got paid by the hour, didn't have to
Beautiful.
deal with all the like employee training and all the stuff that you got to do as an employee. And I also got to start dabbling in programming websites and fell in love with that, obviously, knowing that the internet was taking off. And so I
Yep.
was able to make money, I was able to coach, and I was able to also on the side start building websites. And I built my first big website for a sporting goods company. They remained a client up until about 3 years ago. So they were 20
Wow.
plus
20
years.
plus years.
I built their
Gosh.
first e-commerce website. But what
Incredible.
got me on my path, Noah, was they said this. They're like, I built this website. It took months.
Right.
And they're like, this is awesome. Like, how do we get traffic to, like, how do we get people to know about it? I said,
Yeah.
oh, that's easy. I know how to do that. No idea.
Sounds
I
familiar.
said, I said,
Yeah,
I can
right.
build a funnel for
I
you.
can build a funnel.
And so that got me
Uh,
into internet marketing. Went
yes.
deep into
Okay.
that.
Got it.
You know, I discovered Frank Kern. Went through his programs. I went through John Reese's stuff. That led me to Dan Kennedy, and that we kind of heard that part of the story. But
Yeah.
it was me just like going, oh, like there's a higher value, like coding is fun and
Right.
I still kind of like that, but I'm
Yep.
like, what's really valuable is bringing customers to people. Like I just
Yeah.
kind of inherently like, oh, I think that's more important.
Yeah.
So I again, this is me just going, yeah, I have no idea, but I'm just going to say yes to this.
Right.
And it's
Huh.
obviously taken me on this incredible journey, but
Yeah, of course.
it was, you know, seeing people getting laid off.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, Not like performance raises sucked. And the
Yep.
other thing I hated was that they would tell you how many days you could take off. And, like I don't take really days off
Yeah.
now,
Right.
but I work when I want to, and I don't like I have the freedom to work or not work. It's not like I didn't like working. It's just I didn't like them demanding me to work from this time to this time for this many days. I'm like,
Right.
this is ludicrous. 2 weeks
Yeah.
of vacation.
Right.
Like, I was just like, I couldn't stand it. And my one company allowed me to buy extra days. I bought as many days as I could.
Really interesting. I've
I'm
never
just
heard of
like,
that before. Buy extra
yeah,
vacation days. That's so
yeah, you could
interesting.
you could buy, well, you had this like pool of money and you could buy like different benefits. And one of the benefits was off days. Like I bought off
Yeah.
days. Like,
Right.
but for me, like, one of my values is freedom. Like I don't want people
Mm,
telling me what to do. So
right.
I realized like shift work, I did shift work during college.
Yep.
I worked corporate. Like I put my time in, but I knew it wasn't like I knew I wasn't going to do that. Like
Yep.
inside, I knew I wasn't
Totally.
going to do it.
Right.
And once I started to experience the world, it was like, okay, um, I know what this is about, and this is not who I am.
100%.
So yeah, it was. I didn't have a brainiac product idea. I'm
Right.
not this like startup guy. It's just like I've got some skills.
Yes.
I'm gonna hang out my shingle, and
Right.
I'm gonna get paid for some of this cool stuff that I know how to do.
Totally. I
And I'm
think,
gonna do it when I want to do it,
yeah, right.
if I want to do it,
Yes.
in my own time, which is
Right.
really important to me.
I think that's the main thing to sort of emphasize is the skills. Like that for me is when I first got started, like the skill, what made me valuable in the marketplace was like I knew how to run ads, right? And then it was a
Yeah,
logical progression of like, okay, someone clicks on an ad, where do they go? Do they go to a website or a landing page or a funnel? So it's like, okay, I should learn how to do that. And then somebody opts in on a funnel, where do they go? They go into a CRM or a system. And that's very much what my career has been the last couple of years, just being very deep into that. But I think it's like a mix of being aware of like, what am I actually good at? What am I curious about? What do I actually want to be doing? But also just being in tuned with like the market of like, what are problems that people are having? Oh, I can be a solution to that. And that is where like the money sort of is found. It's like, if I can always be a problem solver for people, then like, yeah, I will be gainfully employed in that sort
yeah,
of position. And same sort of deal. Like, you bring up values, and I'd like to get into that a little bit because, you know, the last couple months, it's been really the last couple months, I've had this shift in perspective around just life that like I've thought about life being, and I think a lot of people feel this way, and I don't like making generalities, but I can because I've been in that position where like life
it's
is
your
a
show.
process. It's my show. Yeah. So I get to do what I want, right? I get the microphone. Um, that life is sort of a process of like finding myself or discovering myself, right? I think a lot of people sort of think that. And the shift has been life is a process of creation, creating who I am, creating myself, and being like awake with eyes wide open as I am consciously creating in this space who I am right now, right? And also, in doing that, sort of, having to sort of in that process, sort of let go of like what this potentially is going to be, and not really being like one of the things that I've worked through is sort of not trying to solve problems before they exist, because I get lost in doing that rather than if I can just
Yeah,
make the most with who I am and what I am right now. I have to trust that this will continue to sort of reveal itself to me. And if I am tapped into that and I'm in tune with me and my kind of my voice, or, we talk about it sort of like raising your vibration to sort of that level, you have to trust that like that path is going to almost be open to you, or that you are creating that path intentionally. So, I want to ask you, like, in this, shift, that you mentioned earlier, like a personal shift, or just sort of where you're at in your journey now, like, I guess, who are you intentionally, consciously creating, like, for Bob now, both, I guess, personally and professionally? I know it's a deep question, but would just love to hear like how you are navigating that. I know that's been a journey that you've been super deep into. So yeah, would just love to hear kind of where you're at with it right now.
How old are you?
I turned 27 next month.
Oh, I wish I would have known this shit at 27 instead of having to go through everything at,
Yeah.
at middle 50 here going.
Right.
Um, you absolutely nailed it. Life is a process of discovering who you are. Um, I'll amend that with one word. It's a process of remembering who you are.
Oof.
I believe we come here encoded with all knowledge and all wisdom, and we make a conscious choice to come
Mm.
into this 3D, have amnesia, and go on this discovery process. But it's not about discovering, it's actually remembering who we are.
Wow.
I think we come here, we are a
Mm.
soul that has a body. We are not a
Right.
body that has a soul, and there's a
Right.
big difference there.
Yeah.
Um, um, and I don't know if you talk about this stuff on your podcast, but you asked the question.
No, I mean you're the one that I know is deeper into this. So like, yeah, you're the outlet. I want to hear it from you.
So what what
Yeah.
what what I've remembered is
Yes.
that that's what life's all about.
Yep.
It is a process of remembering who you are
Right.
and then intentionally creating the experiences that you want to have.
Right.
It is we are creative beings that are connected to this ultimate source that have the same creative power, and we are here to experience life, and we
Mhm.
are here to create things, and all creations come from thought. And I, just like you and others, are working through, well, how do I change my environment by changing my thoughts?
Right.
And I'm spending a lot of time on that. And it's really only been the last year or two where I've really opened up to this and really started doing some of that work, replacing beliefs that I have been operating on since before I was conscious. A lot of the things that are impregnated into us happened before the age of 10.
Yep.
Beliefs and patterns and things that are just by virtue of our environment are just programs that we are running, and not really and most people don't ever question whether those programs are useful, not whether
Mm.
they're right or wrong, but are they useful to me? And and a conscious being, somebody who is awake, goes, is this behavior useful to me because
Mm.
I'm getting this result? So now the way I evaluate things is, okay, I'm having this result and I'm finding that it is not useful to me anymore. So therefore, how do I change the result? Well, we got to go backwards. You
Yep.
change your actions and behaviors and go, okay, what thoughts are creating that?
Yep.
And those thoughts don't come from your logical mind, they come from your emotional mind. It's your subconscious.
Right.
So, and you know this, what I'm working on is my accreditation to like help people through this process, which is, how do I tap into my subconscious? How do I tap into my inner self to actually change the behaviors? The way society is wired is like, oh, well, the way for you to become successful or to do anything is just learn this thing,
Right.
right? Our entire school system is based on learn this information and regurgitate it back to me, and somehow, some way, that's going to make you successful in life. Well, how many geniuses are wealthy? How many smart people with MBAs are actually doing great things and are
Mm.
and are financially stable? Not many.
Oh man.
Um, there is a process that we need to go through, but it is this, which is about 45 to 60% of somebody's success is going to be based on what they think about. There's a lot of studies, and we don't have time to go into this real deep, but
Yeah.
like you know, there's there's been a lot of work done and a lot of studies that kind of prove this point. It's, again, you just look empirically, like if intelligence was the only source of people being successful in this world or not, you just look and say how many intelligent people are really, really like not doing well in life,
Right,
right?
right.
Um, so what you have discovered at your age is going to serve you well, and others who are waking up to this is going to be an amazing thing for them to be able to live a much more fulfilling life because they're consciously aware of the results in their life, the effects of their life, and really, really wise people ask, okay, what are the causes behind these effects in my life, and
Right,
actually go and address them.
right.
That is a powerful discovery. And if that is something you are resonating with, congratulations, because you pretty much unlocked the secret of life.
He's talking to everybody listening, not yeah, not just me. And it's very new for me, and it's a bit. I mean, it's like shaken my own foundation because it's like, where do these
Yeah.
beliefs actually come from? Does this belief serve me? Like, why do I actually believe these things? And like, I am, like you.
It's a really good thing you said there.
Yeah,
Does this belief serve me? It's not, is
right.
this belief right or wrong?
No,
Because there's a lot of people with agendas in the education system and the government and religion that want to tell you that this belief is good for you.
right,
And this belief is wrong. Like our
right,
entire political upheaval right now is because one side says this is right and the other
mhm,
side says this is right and this side says it's wrong. Like it's not about right and wrong. It's,
mhm,
is this useful for me?
right,
That that is a fundamental question. And there's a lot of people with agendas that want to control what you believe, and they want you to be a good soldier. And more than any other vocation, it's entrepreneurs that have realized like that is not the way to go.
right.
Like they are free thinkers. Like me, I don't want them to tell me how many weeks vacation I can take,
Yep,
right?
yep,
And I also went through a religious deprogramming too, Noah, which was
yeah.
like I was fully active and fully bought into it, but there was a part of me that was always uncomfortable.
Hmm.
And it was because I was being told what to believe, and it wasn't, and it was like, oh, I guess I don't believe well enough, or I'm not, like there was always something wrong with me. No, it was this inner voice going, no, that's not what it's about.
Right.
Um, and it's gonna rattle some feathers, but hey, it's your podcast and you invited me on, so here we go.
These are the conversations I want to have. I didn't tell anybody that they have to listen to this stuff. So yeah, it's up to
Right.
them. That like I think something that I'm super curious about is like that voice. That voice that you hear, this is the question that I want to ask. Like, has that voice always have you always been aware of that voice? Are there certain things that you do to maybe amplify the ability to connect to that voice? Is it a voice that you hear, right? Like in the Perry world, we talk about like memos from the head office, and some people see shapes or they hear a voice or they see certain things. Like, yeah, what is that specifically for you?
Um, it's gonna be different for everybody.
Yeah,
Everybody has an inner voice. It's kind of like right now, without realizing it, all around us, there is Wi-Fi signals, there's television signals, there's radio signals.
right.
Now, we can't
Frequencies.
hear or see any of that,
Yeah,
correct?
right.
But there are tuners available. Like I could turn the radio on, I
Hmm.
could turn the television on, I can turn the computer on, and like we're using a Wi-Fi signal right now. Just because you're not aware of them doesn't mean they don't exist. And what I'm saying is every one of us has the ability to hear an inner voice. Now, for me, the way it works for me is my inner voice is my voice, which is kind of confusing because you're like,
Interesting.
well, is like, hmm, like,
Yeah,
am I
how do
really
you,
hearing?
right.
How do you differentiate?
How
Like,
do
is
you
this just
differentiate?
me? Right? Uh, that's a process of trial and error.
Okay.
Uh, but the way to hear the voice is you have to turn off distractions. So you do
Mm,
need to get into a practice of meditation, of journaling, where you quiet your mind. It is go to any religion, go to any sort of practice. They are going to tell you, Christians say to pray, Jews pray, um, Muslims pray. Uh, it is the process. Praying is not about like spewing your true prayer is you be quiet and you listen,
right.
right? That's what meditation is. It is you quiet your mind, you cut out the noise, and then you start to differentiate between like, is this noise? Is this my ego, or is this my inner voice?
Yeah.
I can't say it's anything other than experience and trial and error.
Mm,
Um, and I just know that when I've heard the voice and I've taken a step forward based on that voice and gotten that feedback, like
yep.
you heard it right,
Right.
it's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
I have heard, I have heard a voice audibly in the past. It doesn't happen that frequently, but it has happened for me. Um, but most people will hear that inner voice and it's going to sound like you,
Hmm.
which makes it confusing.
Confusing.
But
Yeah.
that's what happens for most people.
That's been my
A lot
experience
of
with it.
practice.
Yeah.
It's a lot of practice, Noah.
It's a lot of practice, a lot of like being
Can't throw a curveball if you don't practice throwing a curveball.
right. And
You
at
know
first,
that.
100%, but I think like it starts with just being open to it. And like my experience with it has been when I do feel like the intuition or I hear the voice and I have like gone astray from it because I thought like I was just me or like, I'm gonna turn this off, then like, yeah, the the then real world experience has not been ideal, let's just say. And I think there's something to that. The more that like your inner voice is quieted or that you reject it or aren't living true to that, and you're living more in the idea of like, well, I want to please people around me, or living in like the other people's ideas or perceptions, like I'm going to do these things because I want to please this thing that I have set for me, then like that voice gets quieter and quieter. And it's a process of like shedding that stuff and getting deeper into that and finding like, well, I'm going to listen to this voice. I'm going to make decisions based on me. And I don't need it to make sense to anybody else around me because I
Right.
hear it, I see it. That's what I'm going to exemplify and live in and live through, quite honestly. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, just know that a true inner voice coming from source is never going to have you violate somebody else's free will.
Yeah.
There are people who hear a voice and go commit atrocities in the name of this inner voice. They call it God or whatever. If you're violating somebody else's free will or you're pushing your agenda on them, that is not an inner voice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Um,
Good
an inner
distinction.
voice is always going to be draped in love. It's always going to be useful for you,
Right.
and it will give you the voice will give you information about other people, but it's
Yeah.
always in a way to serve them, not to leverage them or harm them.
Yep.
Um, the other thing you could do is, the voice is not just in your head. You can feel
Mm,
it in your heart. You can feel it in your gut, right? Um, they call it a gut check. What
mm,
what does your gut say? Well, what do they mean by that? Well, when you hear something that resonates with you, it's not just something that you logically get.
right.
You feel it.
Right.
You feel it in your heart, right? And you feel it in your gut.
Right.
Those are energy centers of the body, and
Hmm.
it resonates down. It's like, your gut is like the woofer on the system, right? Um, like it's the deep bass. You could feel something like, hey, I feel that in my gut.
Yeah.
When you feel things. That's the other thing is feelings are okay.
Hmm.
Feelings are actually your true.
Are you sure,
It's how
Bob?
your
I'm told it's
feeling
not. Yeah.
your soul communicates, your higher self communicates to you through feelings.
100%.
We are taught that feelings are bad
Yes.
or certain feelings are good. So like, no, your feelings are the language of your soul. So when
Yeah.
you feel something in your heart, you feel love. Um, you get that funny feeling in your chest, like I should not go that way. We've all had that. Or you get this prompting like, look right, and you realize, oh my goodness, there's a car blowing through the stoplight right now. Like, what is that?
Yeah, what is
You
that?
didn't like you didn't hear the voice, but you
Right.
had this feeling in your gut
Yeah.
like, what's like, oh, right?
Yeah.
And look, this has happened to everybody, whether you
Yeah.
whether you admit to it or not, it's
Yeah.
happened
Of
to everybody.
course, you're thinking about somebody
So
and all of a sudden like they reach out, they text you. Yeah, I mean like that's something too. Yeah.
there you go.
There you go. Hmm.
So yeah.
Goodness. I want to be respectful of your time, Bob. I think we could have this conversation be hours and hours because I would love to get deeper
We
into,
could.
yeah, I mean, talking about, I mean, we
And
didn't
we
even
have.
get, I would love to, I mean, of course, like I want to be able to talk to you about like the components of a good story. I want to hear, marketing and get into deep in that. Like
Oh,
I want to talk about, love versus fear and how those are really like the two main drivers in this world. Like I want to get deep into all that stuff. Maybe we'll share or save it for episode number two.
there you
Um,
go. I'm
but
open to it.
fantastic. Where I would like to close this loop, um, and really kind of put a button on some of this is really present like the question back to you. I mean, the word that I always come back to, and we mentioned it a couple times in this, is like success, right? People just throw around the word success. And I think that always means something different for everybody. It's like, systems of wealth. Wealth always means something different for everybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would very much like to just hear your definition of that at this point in your life. And I'm sure that word has meant something different to you, throughout your career and sort of going through this shift. What does that word success mean to you now and how you think about where you're moving towards, like, towards the future? Like, how are you thinking about success? How are you creating success in your life?
It's a really good question. There's a couple ways. There is a component of, let's just start with the financial component. I
Yeah.
think for me, there has been a level of success in that it has bought me freedom and time.
Yep.
I don't currently or believe that I've achieved a level of financial wealth that I'm satisfied with yet.
Yep.
But I do have the ability to do things that many, many, many other people cannot do.
Yep.
So in that light, relatively, I'm very successful. For me, uh, the highest level of success is when I really apply my soul gifts of like connection and empathy and leadership and those things, and I get the positive feedback from people that like it's worth it. So like you at the top of the podcast, just acknowledging the fact like, hey, you've played a role in my life. That means I'm successful because I have poured out my abilities and kind of who I am into you, and it's had an impact. So
Yes.
that feedback loop lets me know I've been successful.
Hmm.
Um, the fact that I've got two grown adult daughters that are good humans, they're kind, they work hard, they also do good things for people. They have great hearts. I'm successful because of that. Um, I married my high school sweetheart, my best friend, and we are still that way. So
It's
on that
beautiful.
standpoint, I have a successful marriage relationship. So
Yeah.
um, I come from a family. I mean, there's a lot of families that look different than mine, that have a lot of struggles. Those are all those are all journeys that those people are on. For me, it's the fact that I get along with that I've always gotten along with my parents, that I get along with my siblings, that I have good extended relationships with uncles and cousins and aunts and grandparents when they were alive. Like I consider that successful. That I come from a rich family of that values each other's presence. So it's just a lot of those things, and
Mm.
it's not narrow for me at all. But
Yeah.
ultimately, like if you said, hey, get down to your last days, it's I would always go to relationships first for me.
Beautiful. I love it. Okay, last question actually. I want to ask you this. Who are you, Bob? Who are you?
Did we not cover this for the last hour and a half?
Just who are you? Like if someone came up and asked you, like not what you do, who are you? How would you answer that?
I would tell them a story, but
Yeah. Ah, it's beautiful.
I'm a highly empathetic person. Um, I'm very intuitive. I am highly relationship based. I like to have fewer people that I go deep with versus many people that I'm shallow with.
Mm,
Uh, I am a coach and a family person, and I'm an entrepreneur that really digs being free and discovering who I am.
it's
We'll go with
beautiful.
that. I'll go with that.
I love it. Bob.
I want you to build me a business card that has it on there.
Yeah, right.
I can hand
Hey,
that out.
anybody that was listening, just again, the takeaways is those I am statements are so valuable, so important. I'll leave people with that as well. So, Bob, your time today was just totally invaluable. Thank you so much. Very enlightening, fills my heart. These conversations are just they're so meaningful for me, and I know anybody that gets a chance to listen, will get just as much value. So, again, appreciate you. Thank you so much. I'll put some links to the podcast in the show notes, strategic story experience, people that want to, get connected with you and want to reach out, of course, 100% highly encourage all those. Um, yeah, like I said, this has been a little while since I've done a podcast, so I forget how to sign these things off. I think I am usually just like, hey, thanks so
I
much.
think you hit the stop button.
Hit the stop button. I
Yeah.
know my sign off is to all my builders out there. I salute you. Bob, thank you again. I'll see you guys all in the next episode.
Awesome.